Hello.
Jill, haven't I seen you on Cold Case Files?
Oh,
Maybe in
yikes.
repeated segments.
You chuckled there when I pulled out the Little League reporter reference from Independence, Kansas. Kansas. So you grew up in a small town, the population 9,000. Not exactly a murder capital, I'm guessing.
Nor a place to start your career. I was 16. I got a work permit and got a job there at the radio station, and I thought Hollywood would call at any moment. And then it's a great job to have because you can then work during school and law school.
But it wasn't a true crime. I mean, where did your interest in true crime come from with a starting point like that?
Yes, I became a lawyer, and when I was studying for the bar, why a tornado came through town. I happened to be on the air, and I gave the warning, for God's sake, take cover. That was in Topeka, Kansas. It was a big F5. We didn't even have ratings or rankings at the time. And in 3 months, I jumped from Little Kansas to Chicago, working for CBS. And for 30 years, I worked there. I was always trying to find a combination of law and broadcasting. And unfortunately, my timing was bad because there were only 3 jobs with that specialty, and they were at the Supreme Court. So I wanted to be a general assignment reporter. Those 4 years happened to be the most exciting for any reporter, any time. Fires, cities burning down, assassinations. I mean, that's news. And so I was able also to cover 6 months. We called it a conspiracy trial there in Chicago. Manson for 10 months.
Well, so was Manson your first
the big one,
the
first
big true
one,
crime?
yeah.
Was that the one that really grabbed you as a sort of a true crime?
Yes. They put the young reporter, I had just gone out to Los Angeles, and put me on the story thinking that it's not going to go anyplace. And the first day, the witness was Linda Kasabian, a sweet little flower girl who literally came in with a dress with flowers on it. Blonde, very attractive, sat there in the witness stand and told the story of this group of black pajama-clad killers going over the fence, having been sent by Charlie Manson, and slaughtering with a knife these 5 people. And then taking a rag, dipping it in their blood, and writing on the wall, "Death to pigs," and things like that. It took 10 months to roll out the prosecution's theory, to convince them that even though Charlie was never at the scene, he directed essentially zombie-like people who had gotten that way with a combination of drugs, taking them all the time, sex, and Charlie's personality. Charlie was 37 years old. He'd spent 27 of those years in prison, so he knew how to manipulate.
You call him Charlie. I mean,
Charlie
even that
Manson,
speaks to your sense of familiarity with him after those 10 months. But what was your sense of him like during that time?
He was genuinely unusual. Life magazine put his face on the cover. And the man with a hypnotic stare who held sway over these young people. And he had a beard. When he went to Haight-Ashbury, the hippie times in San Francisco, he would throw a white robe on, sit on the sidewalk, and play the guitar. And especially runaways would flock around him. It looked as though he was a magnetic personality, and he was. And in the Spawn Movie Ranch with the Manson family, they started talking about him, referring to him as the man of God. Son, man, man, son. They would put it together and say he must be Jesus. Jesus is going to come. And they would have little stories. I was Squeaky Farm. I was walking in the garden with Charlie, and he reached down and he picked up a dead pigeon and blew on it, and it flew away. I mean, all these kinds. And, when you have a cult or a closed society, you could make any rules you want. One of the rules was that if the men within this, quote, family, and there weren't a lot, there were far more young girls. If they wanted to have sex, the girls had to have sex with them. But then, I'll let you ask a good question, but then, they would gather in the evening and sing hymns. I mean, it was a true family. And they would have duties, and some would sweep out. One would be Patricia Krenwinkel, was sort of the mother superior, and then others would go on forays out to the supermarket where they would befriend the young guys who would sweep it out and get free food and bring it back. It's quite a story. It's America's horror story.
It is. And there you are, this relatively young reporter on your first really true crime assignment. As you say, they thought it would be sort of a quick thing, and it was 10 months. What was that like for you? I mean, hearing these kinds of stories and being right up close with this horrific perpetrator of such horrific crimes.
I sat sometimes as close as we are, which is 4 feet, 5 feet. You acculturate to the situation, and soon, the norm becomes, one more terrible story. Here's an interesting thing. We were doing it, and that was 1970. We had probably a total of 12 reporters there. We had the 3 networks. I was with CBS News, and then local. And in the O.J. Simpson trial, which was in kind of the same little Hall of Justice area, they had 3,000. So television had grown, international coverage had grown, satellite television. That's quite a change. So the verdict comes in, and we're all being held, inside the courtroom until the judge says, okay, you can go out. And we went about 15 feet just outside the door. We all had a phone, and one of my great experiences was picking up the telephone and hearing at the other end, "Hold it, Kurtis is on the air." And I heard the CBS music, special report, and knew I was talking to the world.
Wow.
With the guilty verdict, which everybody wanted to hear.
Everybody was waiting for those words, and you got to say them.
It was.
And so, I mean, the story's really stuck with you. Obviously, you made this hour-long TV special on Charles Manson just a few years ago in 2010. I know people now have been glued to the radio hearing you reference Charles Manson. I mean, he continues to intrigue and fascinate in a sort of a perverse way. What is it?
It really does.
What is it for you that made you want to make that documentary again? That makes that story still so powerful for you?
I called it America's horror story, and it really is. But the overriding question, which is a mystery to me, and basically I'm a storyteller, is how did this one man have such control over these intelligent young women to turn them into killers? Was it solely drugs? Well, not really. I mean, they weren't themselves, certainly. Patricia Krenwinkel was the daughter of an insurance man. They were all from middle-class homes. They'd all gone to bed in the Brownies, went to Sunday school. She was taking a break from over the noon hour from her job at an insurance company. And she walked out into the parking lot, and here was this van with these crazy-looking hippies, and Charlie was sitting there playing the guitar. And he said, "Come with us. Just jump in right now. Do something in your life that's wild. You want to do it. I know you do." And she did. Well,
and the fascination, continues. The fascination, I mean, Charles Manson is perhaps the American horror story, as you say, but so many true crime stories are really kind of having their moment right now. I'm thinking Serial perhaps most recently, and the fascination that held for so many people. Why do you think crime stories are so popular now?
They have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a surprise twist. How is the mystery going to be solved? We have replaced Sherlock Holmes with DNA and forensic science. It seems like magic. You can be there. You have a glass of water in front of you. I can take that. You have had a sip of it and get your DNA off that impression. And people go wild, isn't that?
Do you think it's the science, though, that we're interested in? I mean, does it concern you ever, the degree of public fascination with the horrible aspects of these crimes?
Women listen to the crime stories more than men. Isn't that interesting? And we're trying to figure that out too. And it is that they're, we think, interested in the human problems, how people can get in trouble like that and why they do things. It's family, it's the effect on the people around them, both victim and the perpetrator. And a little scary. That's always interesting.
Do you think, I mean, some people argue that these kinds of crime shows, the true crime shows, as well as the dramas, glorify
Yes.
these kinds of acts. What do you say to that?
There is that problem. We do that in news. And I've often not often, but thought that I should pull back from doing gang stories. Well, on the other hand, if you don't do stories on gangs, you're not going to come to the root cause of violence that is killing 35 to 40 young people in Chicago on the South Side. I was covering the riot and fire just as it was getting going on the west side of Chicago back in 1968. And we had a self-imposed boycott of, quote, racially inflammatory stories, afraid that if we broadcast, essentially one, that it would
Trigger others.
And so I'm standing on a corner, and people are getting out of work, and they're going home, and they're driving through the neighborhood, being pulled from their cars. And I made a pact with myself right there. I will never again give up my duty, my responsibility to tell it accurately and fast, because it's a warning as well as.
Do you ever set limits to the degree of detail that you will disclose?
Well, I've given you pretty good detail just in our conversation. There were more limits, but we have had a growth, especially probably driven by the crime shows, that seem to be more liberal of what we can say on television and radio too. I think the breakthrough came with a show on HBO about an autopsy. How can that be a television show? Cutting into bodies and looking for evidence, and what does the body say to you? And, the more blood, the better. And there was an audience there. So I think we've been inured to the grisly details, If you don't like it, don't watch it.
Yeah, you used that word earlier, acculturated, which you say is what happened to you in the courtroom. And I guess that's happening to all of us as viewers and consumers of this information. What about when you're talking to victims of crimes? Do you have rules or any limits that you set for yourself on how far you probe or any of that?
Yes. It seems to be the goal for many reporters to get someone to cry. And
I'm working on that with you right now.
we'll
get there.
I'm on the edge. And, it's easy. You bring someone to a very intense personal matter. Let's say they've just lost a loved one in a fire, and have them start talking about it. And almost for the first time, they are having to face that moment that they haven't had to before. And it rolls around in their head, and they imagine it and listen to it and listen to themselves describe, and they will break up. Well, that's, in my mind, cheating. It's too easy. And so I backed off that. And I don't want that. I want somebody to be able to tell me what happened. I know you feel bad. I just don't think it's right. It's fair. Now, there are still the big 7 words. Shall I recite them to you?
The ones you're not allowed to say on the radio?
Well, that the FCC
or television?
Has told us. So we steer away from the F word, the S word, C word. I know them by heart. But we're also able to slip in a number of other words. You can cut this, but I do a show called Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, which is a news comedy show, sort of, on Saturday mornings for PBS. I never use the word fart, And yet there's a whole string of fart jokes that they go back to. It's almost too easy now. They kind of avoid it. And the kids love those jokes. And
Yeah.
used properly, why, they're good.
So you've covered so many of these kinds of stories. I have to wonder what kind of effect it has on you personally. I mean, I watched the Charles Manson documentary, and we've all seen lots of your programs. And I mean, I had to skip through part and fast forward parts, and even hearing today, you describe some things, I get squeamish just hearing it. How does this affect you on a personal level?
At first, I mean, I've been in the business. I'm 74. I've been in the business a long time. And I would say that, Tolstoy had this idea that if there was a poor person that you run into, and the journalist will say, no, we'll do more good if we remove ourselves and communicate that problem to intelligent people who can solve that problem. Tolstoy said, hell with that. Help him. You're there. And I've kind of changed my attitude. And it is that it affects, people say, oh, well, you've done it 50 years. You must be used to it now. No, it's worse.
How is it worse?
Well, children especially are just so very difficult. And for some reason, I'm now internalizing these things and maybe for the first time waking up to the gravity of what people will do to other people. I mean, cutting a fetus out of a pregnant woman so you can have a baby. We're experimenting with horror in many of our crimes that we hear about every day. Every time I wrote a book against the death penalty, and there are too many mistakes, and that's why we should do away with it. I wanted to avoid the moral argument and just get down to some practicalities. But looking at one crime after another really does mount up. Now, does it mean I can't do it or won't do it? No, it's clinical. You're doing a job, and I can remove myself enough.
But when you say you internalize it more, I mean, what does that look like? Is that you waking up in the night in a sweat? Is that you having to take a moment alone before you or after you have a conversation with the victim? I mean, what's that look like for you?
As a journalist, you'll be interested. It's considering the question, shouldn't I be doing something about it? Instead of walking away so that it's just another story. And so I'm not saying that I've done a lot about it, but I will follow it up or be more likely to follow it up. And at the end
on
of
your own time, you mean as a person, you
yes.
check back and you follow up with some of these people.
At the end of a career, you run into people who 30 years ago had you come out and do an interview, and they say, that was one of the best times of my life. I was on television. They were on television. I mean, for them, it was a monumental moment. For me, it was
another day at work.
Just another day. And so I'm realizing what impact we can have. And it's something that we must take seriously.
So what does that look like? I mean, how do you do that? How do you, you've got your day at work that you're doing, but then you talk about that following up. What?
Well, at work, first of all, you have to be accurate. You have to tell a good story. And you can't be seduced or dragged into a pro-entertainment, producing a show so that it's going to cause the galvanic skin responses to peak the meters. You're not working for an advertising agency, and especially for CBC and PBS, people can take heart in the fact that we're not in it for the ratings. We'd like to have it, but our loyalty is to the viewer, both in the programs that we choose and the subject matter and the people we serve. Now that sounds kind of high-minded, and once you get down to it, we're all interested in being successful and having people listen to us. But it's a matter of balance and proportion. in commercial television in the United States, you work for the advertiser. And it's wrapped in a nice package. Doesn't mean we lie, or it means it goes to the choice of the stories we cover. So very often, the 24-hour news folks who run out on a story very fast have honesty because they can't do anything else. You have to get it on the air, and these are the facts. They don't have time to color it or politicize it or fill it with bias. We're all filled with some kind of bias. But I look back at my career and feel that I haven't wavered from that. I haven't declared liberal or Democrat. I wanted to be the guy down the middle. My hero was Walter Cronkite all those years. And he was the one guy who also had that attitude. The advocate journalism, the bloggers of today, I don't make a good one.
I want to talk about another aspect of Bill Kurtis, which, you've done so much of your career to covering these serious issues, but we know that you still have a sense of humor. You were, as a lot of people listening will know you for this, you were the narrator in Anchorman. What made you take that gig? Talk about a step away from the rest of your career.
He had a voice that would make a wolverine purr. He wore suits better than Sinatra. Well, first of all, Adam McKay, the director, was in Second City in Chicago when I happened to be anchoring at sort of the peak of a local part of my career. And so I was his anchorman. And he said he sent me the script knowing you're not going to get Kurtis. Why don't you look for somebody else? But he really liked it. I laughed so loud reading the script in a plane flying down to Kansas. And when I kind of did the audition and read through the script, I would read a line and laugh, read a line and laugh. And
and it's funny because we know now what a massive success that Anchorman franchise and Will Ferrell, everything he touches is. But at the time, this was a bit of a gamble for you.
It was dicey, and dicey for me in a career. Now, am I suddenly going to be scorned by my colleagues? The other day, and the answer is no. The answer is every anchorman out there is jealous that they...
Your cult status just went way up.
And I knew that I had finally escaped ruining my career when I saw that Will Ferrell had an exhibit at the Newseum, the Journalism Museum.
In D.C.
Between Walter Cronkite and Woodward and Bernstein, investigative reporters. And here is Will Ferrell in Anchorman. And
which not everybody thought was great. Some people took umbrage at the idea of positioning him, Ron Burgundy, as a serious journalist. But for you, it was a sign you'd really made a good choice.
And I say, relax, get off your high horse and don't take yourself so seriously.
You kept that lighter side of your personality under wraps, you might say, for much of your career. Was that hard?
Well, going back to our previous discussion, I'm down the middle guy. I'm not declared liberal or conservative, and I was an anchorman, and that is editorially straight, giving no opinion, just giving the facts. And I felt constrained all these years. But I was loyal to that belief for 30 years with CBS. And then I retired and I started doing all these other things. And I said, my God, I'm out of my cage. I'm out of the shell.
Who you want to be.
Bring it on.
So let me just finish by asking you, considering everything you've covered over your career, much of which has been horrible.
It is all disaster, isn't it?
What makes it worthwhile for you?
Well, I felt it was a calling for me, and I did feel that I was doing good. I started out in 1966, right out of law school, studying for the bar, and a fellow and a friend, the news director at the local station. We only had one TV station in Topeka, Kansas, asked me to fill in for this on the 6 o'clock news. He wanted to leave early on vacation. So here I was, and they asked me to stay. We have some high winds coming in. And I heard at 7 o'clock when we went on with a special bulletin to give, the warning that something might happen, two-way radio cut in, and it said, have a tornado on the ground. It's at the southwest edge of the city, and it's headed for the Huntington apartment complex. Well, I don't know that any of us take the tornado warning really as a Bible in that first one. Okay, give me the next one and make sure it stays on the ground instead of, we all thought it would pop up. And the next, he called in within minutes or seconds. He said it's just wiped out the Huntington apartment complex. So in my head, I drew a line from where it was sighted to the apartments, and then the arrow was leading straight for the Capitol building, hospitals, subdivisions, the university, and 8 out of 10 classroom buildings were ultimately wiped out. My wife and child at married housing on campus, all the kids were running. So early on, I had this brand right in the middle of my forehead that broadcasting can be a force for good. Not many people have the opportunity or difficult situation where the next words they say are going to mean life and death. I never missed that. Now, the immediacy was not there, but I always felt that what I was doing and informing people about problems that could change their life and communicate those problems to intelligent people who could solve them was my creed, my mantra.
And it's interesting that that obviously speaks to a real faith in humanity, which I'm interested how that sustains in spite of everything you've seen that humanity is also capable of.
I have seen, and most of the stories deal with the other side.
I mean, there's police officers who report to those crime scenes on one occasion sometimes are removed from duty for PTSD.
Yeah.
I mean, you've managed to not only continue to deal with it, you say it takes its toll after all these years, but you still have that faith in humanity.
You're a little prober because you're getting deep and you're making me think about these things. But it's real. Going back to just the function of the job, you observe facts and then you tell people about them. We have a role. We're communicators. And without a good job in that communication role, then democracy is not democracy. People can't make the right decisions on how life around them should be. So with that belief and a concentration on that, with an intensity that does not require you to do the job of a priest to say, why did you do it? So I think maybe I've been able to run away from it most of my life until I came to a girl named Jill. And now I've got to think about
She called you on the psychologist's couch here at Q.
I got to think about these things. Maybe that as I get older, that's what I'm doing, is beginning to think about it.
Well, I'm so glad you shared so much of your thinking with us this afternoon. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and good luck. Good job.